right. Welcome back to Theologic. It's great to have you all here with us for our interview that we'll be dropping here at the end of October. I'm Zach Patke.
Sean Mushton.
And we have with us Tim Little. Right now we have Zach Deacon. He is out for today. But we have Dr. Tim Little from Faith Baptist Theological Seminary, as well as he was my Hebrew professor when I was in seminary. And we're going to be interviewing him today, just asking him some questions about a current study that he's been a part of on what might be considered a controversial book of the Bible historically it's been controversial. I know, Dr. Little, would you say that it's been controversial a little bit, Song of Songs?
Very much so. It's still very controversial. And even recent books by Amy Bird, for example, Sexual Reformation, is really hitting the highlights again, and I don't expect that to change.
Yeah, I mean, with the further sexualization of our society and debauchery in our society, we can expect that would be an issue. So we want to set the record straight as to what exactly the Song of Songs is all about. And so we're going to have a conversation with him about that right now. So first, what I want to do for our listeners is just have Dr. Little introduce himself and tell them about what he's been doing. He's also a part of a podcast called The Thinklings, which we would like. Eventually, we're going to get around to doing an interview with them as well and talking about different books and whatnot too. So he's writing a book concerning the Song of Songs, and they're working on publishing it even as we speak. I'm figuring out how to do that. So Dr. Little, why don't you introduce yourself and let us get to know you a bit.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Zach. And Zach, right? It's Zach and Zach over. No, the other Zach's gone.
The other Zach's gone.
Yep.
Sean.
Zach, and Sean. Yep.
Zach and Sean. Zach and Sean. All right, Zach and Sean.
Yep.
Yeah. My name's Tim Little, and I do teach at Faith, and I also manage the campus bookstore, Faith Bookstore. So I'm also in charge of what resources come into the place. Mm-hmm. With that, there's a lot of titles. We sell more stuff than what we agree with, mm-hmm. but there are some resources that we just don't sell. Yeah. So that's one component one thing that I also do. I'm married and I have 5 children. The oldest is 13 and the youngest is 7.
I know what you're saying.
So they're kind of packed in there.
Yeah.
But 4 boys. Those are the oldest 4, and they're a lot of fun and have a lot of energy. So that's just a little bit about me. I attend Faith Baptist Church in Cambridge, Iowa, where I lead the children's ministry. Kids for Truth is what it's called. And then I also co-teach the college Sunday school class. So I do believe in the local church. While I do teach at a school, the local church is where I focus my discipleship efforts. And I really appreciate you two men and your pastoral ministry and your heart for God's flock. So that's a little bit about me. I'm currently writing some articles, and I'm working on a book, Song of Songs for Singles. I just kind of like the alliteration with the S's, songs for singles.
Right.
Come on, yep.
But I do believe there's a message there for singles, and I think if singles would study the song, that they would be on the right road when it comes to dating, love, marriage, and intimacy. So that's kind of a controversial message. And I'm hoping to kind of guide God's church. I really think that it has to be in the church. You men, I hope that the book can help even you men pastor better and to teach your elders, fathers, deacons, to then be able to teach the next generation how to love and begin love correctly. So that's kind of like a little bit of it. I've also written an article about Lady Wisdom and Proverbs. I've done a fair amount of work there. That article, I just got a response yesterday from JETS, the Journal of the Evangelical Theological Society.
Nice.
And they are interested in publishing it. So that was really exciting for me.
That is. Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. I've got to make some changes to it. They want me to strengthen a couple areas. But it sounds really positive, like it's going to happen. And then I also have written a lot on Genesis 3:16 recently with the desire of the woman. So it's all kind of connected to Song of Songs, though. So that's just a little bit about me and what I'm currently writing and working on.
A couple other things that I know about him is he's quite a Yankees fan, and right now I'm sure you're probably really excited about the beginning of the division series here, Yankees and Cleveland. He's originally from New York, but not from New York, New York, right? You're from upstate. Everybody
I
says that.
am. I'm from upstate New York. I don't follow sports a whole lot. I grew up a Giants fan and a Yankees fan,
What?
but
What is that?
oh yeah.
Mhm.
And what is that? It's
Yeah.
the Giants.
Oh, wait.
And the New York
In New
Jets football
York.
team.
Sorry. Okay, that goes to show how disconnected I am with sports. I was thinking of the San Francisco.
San Francisco.
Yeah, the New York Giants, the football. Yes,
Sorry.
not a Jets fan.
So no, it's so funny coming out here to the Midwest. Everybody's all about Iowa or Iowa State or Minnesota or Nebraska, and I'm just like, whatever. We have 3 professional teams.
Yeah, all right. That's right. I grew up.
Buffalo.
Yeah, I grew up in the Detroit area, so I know exactly what you're saying. It's like, wow, you're rooting for the Hawkeyes. I mean, what else are you going to root for, really?
There is a unique feel to the states that don't have any professional teams.
Yeah.
And I enjoy living in Iowa, but there's definitely a unique feel that states have that don't have professional teams.
Yeah, and maybe I didn't send this by way of questions, but tell us how awesome Faith Baptist Theological Seminary in Ankeny, Iowa is.
Yeah, the seminary is doing really well. We have an increase in enrollment, and the students are really just wanting to learn.
Yeah.
It's great to see another generation of young people who want to devote their lives to Christian service. And I really emphasize the pastorate. There's a heartbeat of missions on the campus, yes, but the United States of America itself has become such a mission field in and of itself. And so to see these young men coming in, we've had some really good young men come in, and the need is just like huge. We constantly have churches contacting us looking for pastors. We make Matthew 9:38 a regular prayer. We pray that the Lord of the harvest would send forth laborers into his harvest field. And maybe you're a professional that has attended church faithfully. Maybe you've been a deacon or an elder in your church for a long time. And you're starting to think, maybe God could use me. You should seriously consider. You could audit a class or take even a class for credit. Talk to your pastor. Bring the leadership that God in his sovereignty has placed over you into that conversation. And talk to them about whether or not you could or should be one of those full-time mission field workers. And if you're a young person, then I would strongly encourage you to consider the ministry. I know I was a young boy when the Lord directed me and guided and directed me into full-time Christian service, and I didn't expect this path. I thought I was going to be a pastor, and I'm not writing that off. I may one day be a pastor still. The local church is really where it's at. We need pastors, and it's in the local church that we can truly shepherd people. There are limitations in a school like Faith. But still, Faith's a great place to get strengthened. It's like going to boot camp. You come to Faith, you go to boot camp, you get prepared, and then you go out and you get into the war. You fight the fight. And Faith's a great place to do that. So, really a lot of exciting things happening at Faith. We have a great program in the seminary, great theology from Dr. Paul, New Testament from Dr. Paul and Dr. Doug. And I have a Hebrew program that prepares guys to preach. It's not for the scholar, it's for the pastor. A scholar could use it, but the program really is designed to help pastors better handle God's word and then to serve it on a plate to the congregation. So, thanks for that opportunity. But Faith Baptist Bible College and Theological Seminary, I encourage you to audit or take a class. It's all available online now, too.
Yeah, and you heard it here, folks. Go to Faith. No, that's my alma mater, and I'm grateful for the ministry that continues on going on over at Faith Baptist Bible College and Theological Seminary. All right, with that, let's begin our conversation concerning the Song of Songs. And I think maybe the biggest and most controversial question, I guess, that I would ask, we think about Solomon. One of the first things you think about Solomon is perhaps he was rich. He built the temple in the Old Testament, but he writes a book of romance, and here's a man who has 700 wives and 300 concubines. How do you reconcile this idea of a romance book written by this guy with everything that we understand about Solomon, and I guess maybe what caused him to write?
Can I ask a follow-up question to parallel that? Do you think Solomon wrote the book? And secondly, do you think he wrote it as a positive poem to commend certain activity, or did he write it as a poem, if he is the author, did he write it as a poem describing things to avoid?
Yeah, those are all really, really good questions. And let's talk about it a little bit. I'm going to start by just reading. Okay, the very first verse of the Song of Songs is actually a title, and it states, "The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's." The phrase there is literally, which is to Solomon. And so some people believe that this Song of Songs, the Song of Solomon, was written by somebody else to Solomon. Now, I don't share that view. The to there is often used in the Psalms of David. So like when it says a Psalm of David, it's the same construction. It says Psalm to David. But people have understood it to be an authorship construction, and that's how it's historically been understood. And Song of Songs has also historically been understood as being an authorship kind of construction. So while some people do believe that it is a song written to Solomon, I don't. I do believe Solomon is the author.
Okay, all right.
So to answer that question, now people who don't believe Solomon wrote it, one of the things they point out is that most of the song is written from the perspective of a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it would make more sense that a woman is writing the Song of Songs to Solomon. But I don't believe that the genre of a song necessitates that. I believe that Solomon can write as a woman and write wisdom literature to teach the next generation, even the current generation, teach the reader, just anybody, what God teaches concerning love, marriage, sex, and relationships. So to answer that question, any follow-ups there?
Yeah, I think, Sean?
No, just kind of piggybacking with the question that he was asking about, like this man who wrote Proverbs, a book that we run to with our children for wisdom and stuff, then seems to have kind of some major inconsistencies in a way. And before we dove into that, I was curious if you did think Solomon was the author, and if he is, what is his point in writing? And I don't want to disregard what Packy was asking. I like that question, but it was on a presupposition that Solomon is the author. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, that's good to start with that.
Yeah, that's great. So let's dive into that. So within the Old Testament, you have narrators and authors that use characters to teach lessons. So I'm going to use a different book to illustrate this, and then we're going to come back to the Song of Songs. The book of Ruth has a series of characters, and it's a narrative. It's a different genre. I recognize that, but still, the way that they use characters is similar. And in Ruth chapter 1, you have Ruth, Naomi, and Orpah. Mm-hmm. Those would be probably the three main characters. There are some other characters. You have Elimelech, but he doesn't stick around too long. Machlon and Kilion, they're the two sons. They don't stick around too long either. They all just die off at the very beginning. And then the story revolves around Ruth, Naomi, Orpah, and then the women of Bethlehem. They show up at the end. But these are characters. And characters function in different ways in Hebrew narrative texts. You have a round character. This would be like a full-fledged character. This is a character that we get to know. We sometimes see what they feel or understand their very thoughts. When we talk about Ruth, a lot of times people really just focus on Ruth because, after all, the book is named after her. But she's actually not the main character. The main character of Ruth is Naomi. The text is actually written from her perspective. We see that in how the other characters are named. Ruth is identified as her daughter-in-law. It's Naomi's daughter-in-law. Ruth is not the main character. Naomi is. And as you think through the characters of Ruth and Orpah, you have two women. What is the role of Orpah as a character? And scholars are pretty decided that Orpah is a type or a flat character. She is a kind of a character that's the antithesis to Ruth. So when the trial comes, what does Orpah do? And we're pretty sympathetic to Orpah because, goodness, she was in a really bad situation. But still, what did she do? She left.
Right.
What does Ruth do? She stayed. And the Hebrew narrator is teaching a lesson to the reader about how you treat the elderly and the infirm. Do you just let them go and die on their own? No. What do? Even at great personal danger, at great personal cost, You protect them. You stay with them. You sustain them. I mean, Ruth was impoverished. She was poor. But it was a great testimony of self-sacrifice and service to somebody who was never going to be able to pay you back. It's a real genuine testimony of true and genuine religion, like what James 2 talks about, helping the widow and the orphan. Naomi's never going to pay Ruth anything back. She's simply going to be a liability. Okay, so that idea of characters, you have a round character, and then you have a flat character. All right?
Yeah.
We come to the Song of Songs. Who are these characters? So I'm going to read verses 2 through 4 of Song of Songs, chapter 1. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. Because of the fragrance of your good ointments, your name is ointment poured forth. Therefore the virgins love you. Draw me away. Let us run after you. The king has brought me into his chambers. We will be glad and rejoice in you. We will remember your love more than wine. So the woman speaks, and she speaks all 4 verses here, right at the beginning. She does all of the speaking. And you have this reference to the king. So who is the king? And everybody's like, oh, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Well, he must be the king. Mm-hmm. And I would contend that he's not. He's the king that wanted something. He wanted the female lover of the Song of Songs. But he never got the female lover of the Song of Songs. He teaches the next generation what love is supposed to be. He teaches the reader that God's original design for intimacy. And it's not just intimacy, by the way. It's love, it's marriage, it's sex, okay? But all of it. Relationships, okay? Even the Song of Songs teaches 6 and 7-year-olds about relationships and how they need to be careful. It teaches us these lessons from somebody who didn't do it correctly. And that's where Solomon comes in. All right. Who is the round character? The round character is the male lover of the Song of Songs. And how is he identified here in verse 3? Because of the fragrance of your good ointments, your name is ointment poured forth. You see, the round character of the Song of Songs is this individual, this person with a good reputation. This is the kind of a guy that every young lady should want to marry. He is a Boaz, if I could summarize it, okay? And there's a whole conversation there. It's actually kind of fun, but I won't get into that. So this is the round character. It's like, okay, so how can I prove this to you? Let me try to prove this to you. Should I try to do this?
Sure.
I need a little bit of time.
No, you go ahead.
Give it a shot?
Yeah.
Now we're going to go to the end of the Song of Songs. At the end of the Song of Songs, you have Solomon, which, by the way, Solomon's name appears 7 times in the song. That's intentional. But Song 8:11 states, Solomon had a vineyard at Baal Hamon. He leased the vineyard to keepers. Everyone was to bring for its fruit 1,000 silver coins. So here we have Solomon, and he has a vineyard. Vineyard is a metaphor for his harem. Throughout the Song of Songs, the vineyard represents a woman and the intimate delights that she offers to her husband. We see that in Song 113, in Song 215. As a garden metaphor, we see it in Song 4. So in this passage, when it says he had a vineyard at Baal Hamon, he has a vineyard, not at a specific location. Baal means master or husband, and Hamon means many. So if we translated this place, it's literally Solomon had a harem at husband of many. So this is written when Solomon is later in life. He has his 1,000 women. Now it states in verse 11, he leased the vineyard to keepers because he had 1,000 women. How can he possibly maintain them? All right. He can't know those women. He can't take care of them. You know, when one of them has a problem, I mean, maybe he'll try to deal with whatever her issue is, but eventually he's going to say, this one's got some kind of an issue. You guys go fix it and send me another woman. You know, that's a direct contrast to the male lover of the Song of Songs. If we go back to Song 215, okay, we have the vineyard analogy again. I'm going to read. See, I'll save that thought. Song 215 states, catch us the jackals, the little jackals that spoil the vines. For our vines have tender grapes. You see, the vineyard needs tending. And what does the Song of Songs male lover do? He takes care of the vineyard. I find it fascinating that this idea of taking care of a vineyard, a garden, is still retained in the English language through the term husband.
Right.
We are husbands.
Right,
We're taking care of it.
Husband means caregiver, right? Like somebody who's a husbandman to a field, right? They care for the animals, care for the field itself.
And so the metaphor from the Song of Songs is that your wife is the one whom you're supposed to tend. You're supposed to take care of the vineyard. Well, what did Solomon do?
The opposite, in a sense.
He paid other people to do it.
Oh,
he didn't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't take care of it. You're right. He didn't take care of the vineyard. He paid other people. So back now in Song 811, it says Solomon had a vineyard at master of many, husband of many. He leased the vineyard to keepers. Okay, he's paying other people to take care of his vineyard. Everyone was to bring for its fruit 1,000 silvers. Now that's a lot of money. And that is a specific kind of a woman. It's the kind of a woman that our culture continues to celebrate and idealize today. It is a woman that has been beautified, that is a soft and supple and fragrant woman. It is still the ideal sexual encounter that our world exalts today. To illustrate this, I'm not going to take the time to do this, but you can go to Esther chapter 2. Xerxes wanted to have sex with these kinds of women. And this was at the ancient world, is no different than today.
Right.
And so what did Xerxes do? He sent out a decree.
Right.
Let's get all the pretty girls.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're all going to be mine. And they went through a year of beauty treatment before he even had an intimate encounter with them. That was par for the course. Solomon was likely the same way. So when it says 1,000 silvers, guess what? That is a description of the value of his woman and the intimate encounter that she would offer a Solomon. And there's something within all of our young men that still desire this. It's like, that's what I want. That's a good experience. That's what I want to experience. That's the kind of a woman that I want. But Solomon, later in life, guess what he realized is? That's not where it's at. In fact, real love is something that's freely given. And this is going back to Song 8, 5, 6, and 7. Real love is something that you get from a woman that's not just a body, but that's a person that wants you just because she wants you for no reason. You know, Solomon had a bunch of ladies and he was their sugar daddy, you know, and he realized that later in life, they don't really care about me. All they are is a pretty body. And I'm getting what I'm paying for, but they're wanting something in return. And if he wants what he wants, then he's going to have to pay them what they want. And so there's like this transaction of goods that's taking place with all of his women. And he realizes later in life, I missed it. And he communicates that here in Song 8, 11, and 12. And so in verse 12, the female lover of the song then pipes up. And she says, my own vineyard is before me. And it's very emphatic in the Hebrew. The my pronoun is like 3 times. My vineyard, which is mine, is before me. You, O Solomon, 1,000. And those who tend its fruit, 200. You see, Solomon at the end of his life, he realizes he didn't actually ever enjoy intimacy the way that God designed it. He failed. And he teaches the next generation, this is the way it's supposed to be. So now I'm going to come back to that characterization thing. Who is Solomon? He is the flat character. He's the typical guy who wants a specific sexual encounter, which is a soft, supple, fragrant woman that's gone through her beauty treatments who earnestly wants to have sex with him. Okay. Which these women would have. They would have been highly motivated to make him happy. All right. That's in Esther chapter 2 as well. But then he realizes later in life, no, that's not the way that God designed it. This is the way that God designed it. And the one woman that I want, I never got.
Hmm.
And that's what you have in Song 812. My own vineyard is before me. He doesn't get the Song of Songs female lover. He misses her.
Wow.
And the reason he missed her is because he wanted the wrong thing. And that's what the song is teaching. So there you go. I mean, that's kind of like a long version. I don't know how long I went off on that thing, but
yeah, that's good. I'm in all curiosity. It sounds like what you're saying is the Song of Songs has a parallel with Ecclesiastes in that it is somewhat like don't do what I did. Ecclesiastes, it's all about that. And you get to the end, obviously, and he says, honor God in your youth, right? And then we see a similar theme with the book that follows, Ecclesiastes and Song of Songs. It's don't do what I did. Pursue love the way that God actually designed it, and you'll find the real joy in it.
Yeah, and I think he's learned his lesson from Ecclesiastes, so that he's saying, hey, this is where I thought true satisfaction would lie, and guess what? It doesn't. But there are some clear correspondence. I think he wrote Ecclesiastes and Song of Songs right next to each other, late in life. In Ecclesiastes 7, in fact, this is the paper that I submitted to Jets to get published. This is one of the points I'm making, is that he states this fairly nasty statement in Ecclesiastes 7:28. My soul still seeks, but I cannot find. One man among 1,000 I have found, but a woman among all of these I have not found. And people are like, what? What a nasty guy. He hasn't found a single woman. But think about the 1,000 women that he had.
Yeah.
And what were all of them?
Not as valuable
girls.
Yeah.
Yep.
They were, because he missed the one he really wanted.
If I could pose a question to you about as we read Song of Solomon, you mentioned Ecclesiastes, which is right there in the same area of Scripture. Yeah. You're a Hebrew professor, correct? Did I hear that right? Okay. So I'm guessing a lot of your work in this is based on the order of the Hebrew Bible, Tanakh, and such like we have like Psalm and Job.
It is
Proverbs. Yeah. I believe Ruth comes next, or Song of. I'm trying to remember the exact order, but it's a slightly different order.
Proverbs, Ruth, and then Song of Songs. It's an important part of. It was structured that way intentionally in the Hebrew Bible.
Right. So my question based on that is, how does that inform your reading of the book? How you approach it in the big picture as you do your studies? And its placement there within the Hebrew order?
It's not a lot, but there is some significance to it, and it's actually kind of fun. So at the end of Proverbs, what's the last chapter of Proverbs about?
Proverbs 31, the ideal woman, the virtuous woman.
Yeah.
You got it. And then in the Hebrew Bible, what follows Proverbs?
Ruth. I'm sorry.
Ruth. And who is she?
The virtuous woman.
She is. The word virtuous woman is only used 3 times in the entire Old Testament. Proverbs, I think, 12:4, Proverbs 31, and Ruth 3, I think is verse 12, from the mouth of Boaz. So why is the Hebrew canon structured that way?
Yeah, because
to illustrate.
It's thematic, right? They're all themes put together. Proverbs 31, Ruth, and then Song of Solomon. Am I understanding that correctly?
Now, Song of Songs, what's the connection there? At the end of Ruth 4, you have, at the end of Ruth, in Ruth chapter 4, you have these 2 guys. You have Boaz, of course, and the other guy. Do you guys remember the other guy's name?
I don't, but now I'm very, very interested to hear what this name is.
Yeah.
So in Ruth chapter 4, verse 1, now Boaz went up to the gate and sat down there, and behold, the close relative. That's his name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Flat character.
And in Hebrew, you got it. He's a flat character. His name is Poloni Almoni. It's got a little jingle in it in Hebrew. Poloni Almoni. And it's literally Mr. So-and-so.
Okay.
The modern equivalent would be John Doe.
Okay.
So nobody cares what his name is, kind of.
Extremely flat character.
Nobody cares. It's intentionally omitted for a reason. Okay, this is a theological important point that needs to be grasped because this guy did something wrong. He's the nameless one because he's bad.
Okay.
He's the bad guy. And then how does Ruth 4 end? With a whole pile of names.
Mm-hmm.
We
Oh,
have
yeah.
the genealogy.
Yeah.
And if you study Ruth 4, you'll see the name. Okay, it occurs a whole bunch of times because the author is trying to emphasize something. He's trying to teach you. You obey God's law and do what he says, regardless, no matter what. You obey God's law and you do what it says, even no matter how hard it is, how difficult it is, how much money you're going to lose in the business deal, which is why the guy didn't marry Ruth, by the way. It was all about money.
Okay.
And it cost Boaz a lot of money to marry her. But he did it because he knew it was right, because that's what God said to do. All right? So you obey regardless. This is a guy that has a good name. Now, how does a song start?
Well, the name of Solomon?
Yeah. Verse 1.
Or you're talking about his, verse 3, his
oh.
name is like a fragrance. I think you said something like that.
Because of the fragrance of your good ointments, your name is ointment poured forth. You see, so what is it? What's up with the virgins in verse 3? Isn't that weird?
Yes, it is. I always thought it was kind of weird. It seems like a picture of like something going on that's just not right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
One guy, many women.
Does. It looks like something going on that's not right. But the song is a song. Don't think of a story. Don't think of a drama.
Okay.
It's a song. And the characters, the male lover of the song is not a real person. The female lover is not a real person. Just like the Proverbs 31 woman is not a real person.
Right.
She's a composite character, an archetypal woman. So also are the characters of the Song of Songs. And as a good and godly man that has a name, the male lover of the Song of Songs is the kind of guy every virgin should want to marry.
Okay.
So therefore, in Song 1:3, because of the fragrance of your good ointments, your name is ointment poured forth. Therefore, the virgins love you. And this is the exhortation to the single woman. What do you want? Because often a young lady, what does she want? She wants a Solomon. She wants some guy that's prestigious and popular. She wants some guy that's the star athlete on the basketball team or has all of the interest because of the gregarious personality or whatever. In the ancient world, it would have been the guy that had a lot of money because she would then be able to have his money at her disposal. And the song is teaching her, no, you don't want that kind of a guy. The kind of a guy that you want to marry is the guy that has a good name. Let me illustrate that for you.
Yeah.
You know, sex is kind of physically personal and close thing.
Yeah.
Imagine being close, like sexually close, to somebody who stinks really bad. Yeah, that'd be pretty horrible.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Marrying a guy with a bad name is like. Okay, now I'm going to read Song 1:3 again. Because of the fragrance of your good ointments, your name is ointment poured forth. It's like a cologne that's just dumped out and it just creates this fragrance in the room. You know, think of Jesus when the ointment
12,
being broken.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the idea. And that's this guy's reputation. He's at that kind of reputation so that this woman can just freely and willingly offer herself to him sexually because she wants to, as opposed to him using her body for his own sexual pleasure and selfishness. You don't want that kind of a guy, ladies. This is the kind of a guy that you want. You want a Boaz. You want a good man, not a Solomon.
This has definitely been probably one of the more explicit episodes that we've done.
No, but yeah,
it's good. It's good. I'm not dissing it, but there's certain people that I'm imagining listening to this right now turning shades of red.
Yeah. Well, hey,
it's in the Bible. It's in the Bible.
The good news is we'll get a lot of clicks on this one, right? People like, I'm kidding. No, that's all fun. That's all fun. Okay.
I think it's a really important message for our youth, our young people.
Right. Yeah.
And this gets into even how we teach them about intimacy and relationships and what they really want. The song doesn't say just don't. Instead, it says, guess what? This is what God created and it's good and this is what you want.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it cultivates the affections. This is what the world does to our youth all the time. They say and they paint this picture of intimacy like, oh, don't you want this? And instead, the song's like, no, you don't want that. There's a whole pile of other junk associated with everything that the world's communicating to you.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is what you want. It's a good thing. Learn the lesson from Solomon and learn to love the way that he learned.
Amen. I'm preaching on the seventh commandment currently. Thou shalt not commit adultery. And yeah, as you're speaking, there have been things that you've said that really resonated with what I've been preaching in the past. Obviously, not the technical things of the Hebrew and the going into the canon and stuff, but just in these past couple of seconds, things you've been saying about the world paints this picture, but the scriptures are saying, no, that's actually got a lot of baggage with it, but there is a wise and good God who did create sex and has a wonderful plan for it.
Yeah. So with that idea here, we talked a little bit about the book of Song of Songs being misunderstood. So talk about the misunderstanding surrounding this book and how do we correct people's thinking? And I think you've already touched on this a little bit already, but maybe I could give you a few ideas that people think it's dirty. I knew somebody in my family who would say, "Oh, it's a dirty book. It's a dirty book." How do we help correct people's thinking on those misunderstandings? Just one of them, and any others that you can think of.
Yeah, I mean that's a real, very valid concern. I want to. So one of the refrains in the Song of Songs, I'm just going to read it to you. It's in Song 2:7, and it connects to your question. In Song 2:7, it states, "I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the does of the field, do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases." Now, there's a metaphor there, but I'll just summarize. The woman is speaking here, and she's speaking specifically to the young ladies, okay, to the unmarried virgins. And she's warning them, and she's actually literally asking them, take this oath. But it's not exclusive to them. The you pronoun there is actually a masculine, so it includes the young men as well, but the more specific referent would be the young ladies. And then she has them swear by the gazelles or the does of the field. I'm not going to get into the explanation of that. But then she says, do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. What does it mean to awaken love? Well, this is why the church through the ages has told singles and unmarried people or even married people to be careful reading the Song of Songs because it can awaken love.
Right, affection.
And we don't want our children to awaken love. Now, this is a completely countercultural message. Our world is all about awakening love and enjoying love from as early as you can or want to. The Bible says, no, love is actually a permanent thing. It's a very jealous thing. It's a hard thing. It's something that's like a fire, and you're going to get burned or you're going to burn somebody else. And the way that God designed love is that it's the fire that when ignited, it's never supposed to be put out. So don't awaken that love until the right time.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, you can go look at Song 8, 6, and 7. Those are the metaphors used to describe love in Song 8, 6, and 7. So the song is saying, don't awaken love. So it's a very legitimate concern. But here's where I think that we've kind of dropped the ball as the church. In the absence of knowledge or in the absence of teaching our young people the nature of intimacy and what God teaches concerning intimacy, we've essentially given the world a field day with it so that the world is the only source of knowledge. And as a result, our young people are not told or taught how to experience the feelings that are already in them. You see, they're already experiencing these things of awakening love, but we're not teaching them, well, what is that? The song actually hits you right in the face. And it says, this is something, okay? I can read through this text, Song 1:4, draw me after you, let us run. I mean, this woman, she wants to be intimate with her husband. The king has brought me into his chambers. I mean, what do you think they're doing there? Playing Monopoly?
They're not?
No.
Oh, I got to go back and read it.
Let's be glad and rejoice in you. But what this does is it helps our young people to realize, oh, these are emotions and these are feelings that are to be experienced in a specific time.
Yeah.
And guess what that time is for me right now? It's not right now.
Right.
I need to focus on the other things that God has laid before me. And at the same time, and this gets into another issue, but just the prevalence of singleness in our culture.
Yeah.
Young men, if your life is not fully devoted to the Lord, where you're like pouring your life into God's church or the mission field or whatever, you should marry. That's
Amen.
God's design for you. And then you have an opportunity to experience this beauty that God has created, which, by the way, you're going to have to work at it. It's not going to just be like amazing right away. That's what the song even teaches. But this is where, so I'll often use C.S. Lewis's book in Abolition of Man as an illustration. He talks about chopping down forests and irrigating deserts. And what we as the church have done is we've been chopping down forests where we've been saying, don't. And as a result, we've just created this desert, barren wasteland, which has created in our young people they've become a fertile field for the world's philosophy and instruction. And instead, what we need to do is we teach them the Song of Songs, which irrigates the desert and explains this is the way God designed it, and this is a good thing.
Yeah.
And then by teaching them like a father teaching a son, or the church teaching, like you as pastors teaching the young men, okay, in particular like a one-on-one or even a public setting, you're teaching them how to control those feelings, those emotions that arise within them.
I have a question.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
So the question I was going to ask wasn't much for clarity because I was totally tracking with you there. But I kind of want to back up on the age a little bit. I'm a father of a 5-year-old, 2-year-old, and newborn. So here in a few years, we'll start to read through the Bible with our children. So what do I do when I get to this book and I'm sitting in a living room with a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old? How would you advise a parent that's reading to a child, let's just say that's before puberty, before those feelings begin to kind of naturally stir, and then maybe other things kind of encourage those stirrings? How do you read or talk about this book with children, young children?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I teach our children's ministry, and I was sitting with my 4-year-old daughter, and we were watching, I don't remember, some Disney movie, and I'm looking at this Disney movie, and I'm like, they are teaching my daughter what love is.
Okay.
They are teaching my daughter at 4 years old what marriage is supposed to be, and it's wrong. And I'm like, if they can teach it, then I can too. The answer is how you do it. Okay, and so you use the words that the Bible uses. You use the words that the Bible uses. And that's one of the answers, by the way. And I don't have to teach them everything, but I then did a 4-part series in my church to 4-year-olds to 6th grade. And I talked about relationships and how God does not want you to awaken love. You do not need to have any kind of an exclusive relationship. You need to have friends, and you should all just be friends with one another. So that was probably the most important lesson that I really hammered with them. I talked to them about kissing and how the world says you can kiss. The Bible doesn't say that you should kiss until you are married. And I walked them through Song 1, 2, Song 4, Song 8, Song 7. There's several places where it talks about kissing and how kissing is designed for husbands and wives. Very, very easy. Okay.
Yep.
I talked about 2 other things as well. I don't remember what they are right now, but I basically just walked them through four lessons, and I hit Disney right in the face.
Come on.
And, I mean, I say I brought the Bible, and I let the Bible hit Disney right in the face, so that our children would begin to understand. So I don't think, how young is too young? Well, if they're teaching it to my kids, I'm going to start teaching it right away. Forget them. Now, as far as dealing with like the 9-year-old, they haven't hit puberty yet. I'll just use a story as an illustration. I remember when I was a young child and I was watching the Disney version of Robin Hood. And, there's that little scene at the beginning where, Little John dresses up as a woman
Yep.
and, he's got his fake blessedness on and everything. And they're running through the forest. And then Robin Hood turns around and tells Little John to stop. And they talk and he puts his hands up right on Little John's fake blessedness. And I remember seeing that scene as a little kid and my grandpa just chuckling. And I remember being a little kid and looking over at my grandpa and being like, "What's so funny, Grandpa?" You see, it flew right over my head, what was going on there. And that's what happens with the song as well. And that's how you teach the song and you preach the song, is that you use the metaphors that the song uses, and the people who are experienced and who know, they know what it's saying.
Okay.
And the children and the younger ones who don't know, it just coasts right over their heads.
Okay.
And if it's not coasting over their heads, then they need to learn it.
Okay.
It's time.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
It's a great question.
Yeah. But it's nice that, as it's been said before, Song of Solomon has metaphors there for a reason, to sort of veil and keep things from being too explicit in people's minds and thinking. It's just brilliantly crafted as we think through for that purpose, for others to know, even for little kids. One other question, if you have any other further thoughts, I'll invite more thoughts here. I think we've already touched on this a little bit. Any other benefits to a non-married person that would come when we study the book, and of course to a married person? Anything maybe we haven't already touched on that you'd find to be appropriate?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, and I'm not sure I'm going to jump into any more of them just because of time. We've kind of gone through a lot already.
Sure.
I will say I am doing, my wife and I are doing a conference with the Iowa Association of Regular Baptist Churches, Reclaiming Biblical Intimacy, or Reclaiming Marital Intimacy. It's in February. If you're interested, you could, you and your wife, this is couples only. This isn't for singles. This would be for married couples. I believe we've completely messed up when it comes to intimacy. I shouldn't say completely. That's an overstatement. Okay. But we the church has actually bought into several of the lies of our world and don't even realize it. So when we get our book out, there's going to be some parts that some people really are not going to like. But I think actually the song's message for intimacy creates peace in the home. There's a lot of war that goes on in a lot of the marriage beds, or even just miscommunication or issues that are just galore between husbands and wives. And the Song of Songs teaches, hey, guess what? These are some natural inclinations that a man is going to have, that a woman is going to have. And when I have an open field for like more specific audiences, like men only or women only or married couples only type of a thing, then I can get into more of those issues. But there are some pretty specific guidance that can be shared, and I'm looking forward to sharing more of those. And pay attention for our book when it comes out too. Hopefully in 3, 4, 5 months.
Okay, I got a couple of quick questions. I don't foresee these being long. But one, based on what Paul teaches in Ephesians 5 about marriage being about Christ and the church, is there anything for us in Song of Solomon regarding learning about the relationship of God and his people? We would answer in a simple way, yes, all of the Bible is about Jesus, but
good question.
Specifically to the relationship of Christ and the church, is again kind of connecting it to Paul's statement about marriage is a mystery that's really about Christ and the church. Do we see anything like that within Song of Solomon?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that do, and I am hesitant. I just say no. Okay. I don't believe so. Now I'll explain to you why, just really very briefly. One, God is never mentioned in the Song of Songs. So I think that's intentional. In fact, that adjuration refrain that we saw at Song 2:7, I'm going to read it again. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or the does of the field. Why are they swearing by Bambi? I mean, if you want to break the oath, why not just go shoot Bambi and then you could just do what you want?
We got Disney in here, so no. I'm kidding.
Exactly.
Could I ask? You mentioned earlier there was something to that metaphor. You said I know at that point you said it was a long explanation, but since you mentioned it, could you give us a brief synopsis as to what that is about?
Sure. It's to answer your question, actually. So yes, the word for gazelles is in Hebrew is tzivaot. And a common name for the Lord in the Old Testament is Adonai Tzivaot.
Okay.
That's the name, the Lord of armies, the Lord of hosts.
Okay.
You see it repeatedly throughout the Old Testament. This is a play on words. Normally you would expect God's name to be right in that spot because you would swear an oath by the Lord. But God's name is intentionally omitted and gazelles is put in its place because the original Hebrew would have heard Tzivaot and they're like, oh yeah, that's like the Lord. Adonai Tzivaot. And similarly, the does of the field are Eliot Hasadah. Eliot Hasadah, which is very similar to the Hebrew El Shaddai. El Shaddai. It's El Shaddai, God Almighty. Yeah. So God's name, I believe, is intentionally omitted in that oath formula for a reason. God is disassociating himself from the song, from sex, because the intimate experience between husband and wife, or just sex, even if it's not husband and wife and it's an immoral version, was often equated as a means of drawing close to the deity, drawing close to God or the gods. Yeah. In the pagan religions of the day, there was gross immorality, and the man would go to the priestess and he would have sex with the priestess as a means of fertilizing the ground and getting rain, and all kinds of immorality was prevalent throughout the ancient religions. And I believe that God intentionally kept his name out of the book of Song of Songs to disassociate himself from the act of sexuality. And furthermore, we think through our theology of who God is and that he is asexual. He is a spirit being. When we are in our resurrected bodies, there's no sexuality. Okay, sex is something that's this worldly. It's not going to be in heaven. That's why Jesus makes a statement about the men and women in the resurrection. Okay, so I think that God's name's intentionally omitted, and I think we as preachers and as pastors and as scholars, because a lot of scholars do this, need to be honest and careful with how much of an analogy we create between sex and God. Now, when you go to Ephesians 5, where is sex in Ephesians 5?
Oh, I don't know if I can think of it being necessarily sex related, or I mean,
yeah, it's just
marriage.
It's the relationship. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So that's where I believe that people have overread into the analogy of the analogy of marriage in Ephesians 5 into this union. And I think they've actually done something with the song that God never desired.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. And the next question is even shorter than that. What resources have you found most beneficial in your studies of Song of Solomon? Anything from like maybe a couple examples of something academic, and then maybe a couple examples of something that is just accessible to the church member.
So Cheryl Exum is a liberal feminist. So for an academic source that you're going to need to read with discernment, her commentary in the Old Testament Library series, A Song of Songs, would probably be my favorite commentary. I disagree with her exegesis on multiple points, but still, she understands the book as a whole well. And so that one, Richard Hess, he has a commentary in the Baker Old Testament Commentary series. That's a pretty academic resource as well, and he gets pretty close too. So when I teach the Song of Songs, which by the way, I actually teach it in April as a module, you could audit it or take it for credit if you have a bachelor's degree. Those two. And now for a popular source, Sean O'Donnell in the Preaching the Word series, that's the commentary series that, again, I think gets pretty close to the idea of the song. Again, I disagree with all of these books at various points, but for the most part, they all understand the book as a whole correctly, as a song, not as a drama. And they uphold, I should be careful, Exhumed does not uphold biblical morality. Okay. I mean, she's out to lunch on that. I mean, but the other two, they uphold biblical morality.
So she gets kind of the literature and how the book works.
Yeah. She's a feminist, and so she understands, and she's done a lot of work in the language and in the culture. So as a more technical resource, I think it's very helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, this has been really good. I'm really, really glad we did this. Is there any other further thoughts that we need to bring out here on the Song of Songs before we close our time?
I would just encourage your listeners to actually study God's Word. Mm-hmm. And this is always kind of funny, because when I'm saying to study God's Word, I would encourage you to study the Song of Songs. Now, you might have some dating couple in their church. That doesn't mean that the two of you should study the Song of Songs together.
Sure,
all right?
Right.
Older men teaching younger men. Older women teaching younger women. And teaching them, having a Bible study on the Song of Songs. I would encourage you to get into it. And as you read through it, scratch your head. One author called the Song of Songs the enigma of enigmas. It is an enigma. It really is. The ancients wrote in this way. You have to think about it, and you will have to struggle with it. And if you don't want to believe what it says, you won't have to. It's like a parable. Jesus spoke in parables so that if people didn't want the truth, they wouldn't be able to see what he was really saying. Similarly, if you don't want to believe the song, if you don't want to subscribe to God's truth concerning sexuality and morality, then you will find your own path through the book. But if you will submit yourself and just hand this very personal part of our lives over to God and say, God, whatever you have to say, I will do. What you will find is the truth. You will get it. You'll have to work hard at it, but you will get it. And we're writing our book to hopefully help you to do that. So that's my challenge to you. Get into this little book. Study it out. Have fun learning what God teaches concerning love, marriage, and sexuality.
Well, wonderful. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Little, for coming and teaching us and challenging us. I think this is going to be a huge encouragement and a strengthening agent, and the Lord has used you mightily here. So we look forward to this episode. Will drop on October 30th, and we'll look forward maybe to connecting with you a little later on, maybe in another interview in the months ahead.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot, Zach and Sean.
Thank you.
You take care.
Mm-hmm.